right, so we have, this is history, we have the oldest person, yes, on the program, yes, Mr. John Lambert McHugh. Hope I pronounced it correctly, have I?
Yes, McHugh, perfect.
And we have also his daughter. What a fortunate woman to have her dad still alive at 104, Emily McHugh. Now, who is this gentleman? Here we need to find out. I hear this gentleman is from the beautiful island of Jamaica. And he left Jamaica many years ago and went to the United States of America. I heard he also assisted in World War II. Well, I have only heard about that. He will have to tell me all about that and give me an idea as to what he did and tell me about having gone to the United States and probably come back to Jamaica. Tell me exactly what things have been like in terms of when he sees Jamaica. Is this the same Jamaica that you left some years ago? Great to have you, Boss Lambert. How you doing?
How are you, Daddy?
Fairly well, sir.
Right. Now, I want you, and I know that there might be some challenges in terms of of communicating with me, but you'll try and assist as best as possible, Emily.
Yes.
Now, way back the days when he was born, what he used to do as a youngster in Jamaica?
I was a printer.
A printer. Where you used to, which printer you used to work?
I worked as a printing in my hometown, St. Johnsville, of Burroughs and Son.
Okay, because I know at the early years, before Marcus Garvey had a printer, I think, I don't know if it's there, but I know he was involved in the printer business. Now, tell me about that Jamaica, growing up as a youngster. What can you remember about that Jamaica in the 30s?
Remember, well, the church here was about his now. You know, if I said you something, sir, I am 104 years old.
Yes.
So my memory is not what it was when I was 20 years old.
Right. I know, but whatever you can recall, you tell us, no problem. We understand.
I was a young man in my 20s.
Yes.
And I was a great footballer.
What?
Footballer.
So who you used to play with though? Which team you used to play with?
I used to play with a team
St. Anne's Bay.
in St. Anne's Bay.
Right.
And I would say hundreds, thousands used to come out to watch me play football.
Yes.
And the day there was a match being played, and they realized that John McHugh would not play that day. They go home.
that sounds like what we would still do today. Now, can you remember anything about the kind of life you lived, what the school was like in those days? Can you remember what school, for example, was like, school life?
Well, so I was a young man born of one Captain Luther Isaac McHugh of Osiris,
Yes.
and my mother, Eugenia McHugh, as my mother.
Mm-hmm.
We had 7 children. I hope I'm right.
But you don't worry yourself because we know that even at my age, I slip up sometimes, much as at yours. And very few of us will even reach a fraction of that age.
Can I interject for you a bit?
Yes.
Daddy? So Daddy started off at the infant school at the St. Anne's Bay Baptist Church,
Mm-hmm.
as a little boy, and then he went to the St. Anne's Bay Primary School from there. And then he was an apprentice in Mr. Burroughs' print shop. And the print shop was the same printery where Marcus Garvey worked many years before.
I figured as much.
Yes, so that's
Mhm.
the connection with that.
Right, right. Now, I'd love to hear about leaving Jamaica. If you can still tell us, why did you leave Jamaica and what was it like heading to the States? How did you get, for example, involved with the war?
So,
So
Daddy,
start out by why you left Jamaica.
why did you go and become a farm worker, Daddy, during World War II? What made you do
A
that?
farm worker
Mm-hmm.
during the war.
Well, he realized that it was a very momentous time in history,
Yes.
and he wanted to do his part, as did many other Jamaicans at the time. And the British and the US governments created an entity called the War Manpower Initiative. And
War Manpower Initiative, uh-huh.
yes, and
Mhm.
in the US government, they created the War Manpower Administration. It was set up during the war to
Yes.
get additional work to support farms and industry throughout the United States because farms were going out of business. Nobody
Okay.
could reap them, the crops, couldn't feed, not have enough crops to feed the country and the soldiers at war. So they realized the crisis and they put out the call. And Daddy was one who answered the call, but you also had to be chosen. You applied and you had to be chosen. And he was chosen to go with that group of men to the US in 1943. And so
1943. I'm trying to recall what was I doing in 1943. I don't think anybody they even conceived of murder at that time.
yes,
But
yes.
I'm sure Daddy has given you a lot of history, and that is why. By the way, I hope you are documenting all these things, because you're living with history.
Yes, we are. No, we do. And what he did, he speaking of documentation, he kept a diary. When he was 23 years old, he documented everything.
That's
Every
unusual.
Yes, we have all the original diaries still. Actually, he started when he was 14 years old. But at 23 specifically regarding this particular event during the war, he drew a map documenting when the different countries were being participating in the war. He drew out the map and as
Yes.
history unfolded. And then he kept this diary, and based on the diary, that's how come he ended up writing his book about the forgotten reapers of World War II and the gallant Jamaicans who helped defeat the Axis powers. So it all came from his diary that he kept during that time.
And we ought to remember that there are many persons now who are very anti immigrants going to various countries, but he's a living testament to the work that Jamaicans have contributed, not just to United States, but also to United Kingdom and other places. Even in the building of the Panama Canal, Jamaicans were involved in that. So
Oh,
what you have as the United States, I must credit persons like him for helping to build that country. And Jamaica, I'm sure, can help to make America great again, to use a phrase from.
absolutely. And just to highlight the point that they were invited to come. So they didn't just show up on American shores. They were invited to come. They were asked to come to help save America. So that is a critical point for people to understand. These gentlemen were invited to come to America because he was just fine in Jamaica. He was the manager of his print shop. He didn't really need to go. He had a fine life in Jamaica already, and he returned to that life after the war. So
Yes,
there were many people who went as a patriotic participation and also the
right.
adventure of going to America.
I tell you what,
But
we have to go for the break. And we come back. We'll hear from him again, but you will help him to tell us about what life was like during the war. I'm sure he has told you quite a bit about what life was like during the war.
yes,
All right, you're listening to Spot On with Vern and Darby coming to you live from Kingston, Jamaica.
During the last World War, America was trained for workers,
Yes,
farmers in America. And there was two objectives. One was to go to England. The other was to go to America.
that was the
yeah,
choice.
That's the American journey was to help on the farms in America.
right.
because the Americans was trained with soldiers. And so they wanted farmers in America to gather
The crops.
the crops.
So, Daddy, when you were there, what was life was like? You had to get up early in the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning. You were on the farm, weeding the onion fields. So they were in Elba, New York, upstate New York, which is the largest onion producing capital, if you will, of the world.
Yes.
And that's where he went. But when the farm workers, when these gentlemen left Jamaica, they didn't know where they were going to go in America. They went all over the country. He just so happened to end up in New York, which was fortuitous because he had relatives in New York City and all of that. But he was in upstate New York. But it was a lot of hard work on the farm, cold, first time in the winter, so you can imagine.
Now,
Right.
tell me, I'm just wondering, when you left Jamaica, did you have the wife that, or you went up there, you found a wife?
Neither.
I wasn't married. I was a young man.
20.
So so hold on, so you was behaving yourself then?
And I went as a farm worker to America.
Yes.
He got married when he returned.
Oh, hold on. Let me just say from him. Yes. Go ahead.
I didn't get married yet.
Yes.
I was a young man during the farm, during the war. And I went as a farm worker instead to work on the farms because America was trained with men gone to the war.
Yes.
And I found myself going to New York to work, and I chose to go to the farms to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I work on the farms for the old of that time till the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to Jamaica.
Oh, so is at that point you found a wife? Is at that time you found a wife and got married?
I got married. No, I did not get married yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at what point now you got married and started to have children? Or when you probably did get married, I really don't know, but just tell me at what point you started to.
You got married when you were 31 years old, right, Daddy? You were 31 years old
Yeah,
when he got married, and he returned to Jamaica when he was 24. So it was a few years before he got married, and then married my mom, and 3 years later they had their first son, my brother Michael. So
Right. So how many children do you have? Listen to me, how many children?
I have 4 children.
4.
2
So
boys and 2 girls.
So you're a good boy, man. You didn't have 10 and 15 as I used to do in those days.
So
You
didn't
know,
have
you didn't have you didn't have 10. No, you didn't have 10 and 15 and more like they used to do in those days. 10 and 14 children.
no, I went back home before I married.
Right.
And I've had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls at that time.
Right. Let me ask you, what would you say has caused you to live this long till you're now 104 years old?
One, my life living, I never know lived that long. And because I live a good life, number one, I was obedient to my parents.
Yes.
My father was a pilot, and at one period owned his own ship, the Calvin,
Okay.
living. My father, he was a pilot, he was a seaman,
Mm-hmm.
a good seaman. He knew every port in Jamaica.
Okay. But you said you live a good life. What would you say is a good life? Tell me specifically what you did with your life, which allowed you to live this long, you believe. What did you do with your life?
I live a healthy life. Number one, I was a young man in my 20s,
Yes,
and I played soccer, which was football,
right.
for my town.
You know what they play? You know what they play nowadays, Mr. McHugh? You know what they play? Sit down all day and play games on the computer.
He says, I play a lot of video games on the computer these days, not as active as your time. But you know, he was also very active in his church. He was the superintendent at his
Was a Methodist.
Methodist
Yes,
and a lifelong.
yeah, I'm coming to that. Now, tell me more about, so you exercise. What about eating? Tell me more about what you ate.
What do you eat, Daddy?
I can't remember, sir.
He eats porridge every morning, either
Yes.
cornmeal porridge or what have you. He takes all kinds of supplements to keep him going nice and well. But above all, his strong faith in God, and he reads listens to the Bible now. Can't read so much, but his faith in God has definitely kept him. But having a very active lifestyle and moderate and temperate lifestyle as well.
I want to go about for 2 more minutes before we go for the break. For the young people today, Mr. McHugh, what advice would you give them at this point in time as a man who you have seen the world, 104 years old? What would you give advice to a young man growing up in Jamaica?
I would advise the young people, first of all, to study their Bible,
Yes.
to learn about God, who created them. And I was a Sunday school teacher for over 10 years.
Yes.
And I became a printer when I was a young man in a firm in St. Anne's Bay, owned by a man named Jack Burroughs.
Right.
And I was a Sunday school superintendent for over 10 years.
Let me ask you though, how did you used to get around in, say, the 40s? How did you move about? You had car, you had bus. Tell me, how did you move about?
What was the transportation like, Daddy, in Jamaica in the 40s? How did you get around?
I get around quite well.
What did you do? Did you take taxis? Did you walk? How did you get around?
The life I get around was working eventually.
I don't think you're fine. So
don't worry. Let's go with the flow.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
Tell him what you want to say, Daddy. Yeah, to finish what you're saying.
At that time, I was a man in my 20s. And my mother sent me to the printing establishment as a young man. And they wouldn't believe that I would do anything spectacular.
Right. But let me ask you, to go to that printer, were you living near to the printer?
Yeah, I was living near where I could walk to be work.
Oh, so basically you could walk to work.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that helps to make you fit. All right, I tell you what, we're going to go for a little musical break and we come back. Emily, I want you to tell you about that book now so we can learn more about that, so we can learn more about Daddy's life. And we do hope that you continue to live and you all continue to take care of him. You all are alive?
Yes, my brother just left right now. We were all together in Jamaica recently, all four of us. So,
Yeah.
and five, daddy five. So,
But it
yes.
seems that if you want to compete against Daddy, because all four of you are still alive, so I'm sure you're going to compete against him.
No competition here, just the grace of God.
Don't worry, I would be surprised if a few of you reach 100 too. All right, I'm going to go for the break and come back. Let's have a bit of music, give you a little break and come back. And then we talk about the book and what you're doing because you have lived a long and an interesting life, something we can learn about. And I understand, my listeners understand at 104, the fact that you can be on radio and communicating. I know sometimes you won't hear well, so that is quite understandable. That's definitely not a problem. So when you come back, we talk some more.
I couldn't afford a motor car to drive up that hill.
Ah, not even donkey because a donkey then would cost a lot of money.
I used to walk to and fro to work.
I see. Now we take a bus from one bus stop to the other. Gonna go for the break. When we come back, we continue the conversation with a man who is 104 years old, Mr. John Lambert McHugh, and also his daughter, Emily McHugh. So come back. Don't move. You're listening to Spot On with Vernon Darby coming to you from that beautiful country in Jamaica where we say we little but we tallow. And of course, our very special guest, as I said to you before, today is history, yes, in the making with a man who has made history in his family too. Mr. John Lambert McHugh, a war worker, 104 years old, and his daughter Emily. And can you imagine? Oh, I need to find out about wife Emily. Tell me about mommy.
Our mom passed away. Her name was Lurleen Elise McHugh Marr. She was Marr McHugh rather. She passed in January of 2018. But she was a wonderful lady. She was originally from Evansville, St. Catherine.
How old was she when she died?
86.
Well, them Batwell man. Now, before I leave Mr. McHugh, now I want to leave you totally, but just want to ask you to say something to the country of your birth. If you had to say something, if I should tell you that you are now the Prime Minister of Jamaica. You heard me?
Daddy, what would you like to share with Jamaica?
No, hold for me. Let him come here. Yes. If I tell you now that you are the Prime Minister of Jamaica and you're going to speak to the people of Jamaica in one sentence or two sentences, the country of your birth, what would you say to the people of this country that we will always remember?
I was a Sunday school teacher for well over 11 years. I of the Methodist Church under a man named Reverend Percy Hayward, a great man who was a Presbyterian, and he gave me the privilege to borrow books from his library. Reverend Percy Hayward was a great man.
Yes.
And I had access to his wonderful library when I was a young man.
Well, I must tell you, Emily, you wouldn't believe it, but he has answered my question. Probably not the way many would want him to answer it. What I got from him, that he had a great mentor. And probably what Jamaica needs now, we need great mentors. He used to read a lot. So he's also telling us now that we should read quite a lot. So don't worry, I'm following him pretty well. And at 104, I know. And that's another thing as young people, younger people, we need to understand that the older you get, you don't follow your train of thought will vary. we just have to be understanding. And as somebody in broadcasting, I understand very well, and I know how to work with this. Although it's on radio, everybody need to understand. Not many of us reach even 60 and 70. Many of my schoolmates and my friends have passed on. So when you reach 104, even just to say, hello, I'm hearing you, that is fantastic. And I must tell you, he has been able to communicate with me very well. I know sometimes he goes off, but he has done a fine job. And I think I've had him up for a little bit too long now, so I'm going to give him a little break now and to hear from you. I gather that a book is being written, and I guess you're all assisting him, and that is something to at least leave. Tell me about that book, and tell me more about that book. How far have they gone with that book?
Here's the book.
The Forgotten
Reapers of World War II. Gallant.
So hold on, what you're telling me? So the book is already finished?
Of course, it's on
No, but
Amazon.
you bet me think I thought that book just all right. No, I don't believe you.
Oh no, this has been in the writing for over a decade. That, well, as I mentioned before, it was based on his diaries that he kept when he was 23 years old.
Yes.
40. And then he compiled it into a book in 1995.
Yes.
Then it kind of sat there for a while, and then there's this thing called Amazon that became available a few years later
Yes.
to publish his own book. And my brother Michael did a lot of work to do the editing, fact checking all the dates that Daddy would write, the dates he did this and that, and we wanted to
My
make sure.
God.
And it all checked out. He was very accurate in how he recorded, like seeing a Yankees game on June such and such, 1944, very accurate. And he landed in America the same week that the Normandy invasion was taking place in France.
In France, right. Oh, I think thousands of soldiers lost their lives.
Yes. And so while the soldiers were landing there to help save the European, the war in general, all the people, Daddy and his cohort were landing in the U.S. to help save the farm. So it was a concurrent historic event.
So while some were fighting in the war, there were others like himself were fighting in the country to make sure the country could survive, because you need the soldiers, but at the same time, you need the workers to do certain things.
You needed food. You had to eat.
Exactly. This is a fantastic story. My listeners are really, and I hope when I said it out, others will listen, understand the role that migrants have played in a country like the United States, and even in Britain too, because on the Windrush, quite a number of thousands of Jamaicans went to United Kingdom. So you have those who contributed in the days of slavery. And you had those who came out their own free will or invited to assist and to build these countries. So I hope that book really gets out there. How can you get to buy the book now?
Well, it is available on Amazon.com.
Yes.
And we're hoping that it will be more widely available in Jamaica. We're also working towards that end and wherever else that it can be made available. But it is an amazing book in terms of not only documenting a personal life story, but the historical backdrop taking place and the role of Jamaica and the role of the Caribbean. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that there are a lot of staging stations were set up in Jamaica. Refugees from Spain, Gibraltar were sent to
at university. Yes, man, at university had a camp there too.
And the training of the soldiers and all that, Indian soldiers, British soldiers. So Jamaica played a great role. And it's important that that be highlighted, the contribution that Jamaicans made.
We have to leave you now, but you will have to also be a lecturer. While the book is there to read, you need to go out and tell Americans and other people, because I don't think they know this history at all. Let me just hear from him. Mr. McHugh?
Daddy.
No, he's a little tired. Just hear from any one word you want to say to my listeners before you leave.
What would you like to say to Jamaica before we leave? This is an opportunity to address your nation. Any parting words? Maybe subscribe to your YouTube channel at John McHugh Author. That would be a great thing. What else do you like to say? Daddy, what would you like to say?
I think you're not going to get anything from him. He has had enough and we have kept him for a very long time. But with you can tell us very quickly how we can get the book and how we can make contact.
Yes.
Well, sir, I am proud to contribute to my country by writing that book. I know what it is to live as a young man in Jamaica under British rule. and my work at the printing office, and how I was transferred into writing a book on the ones that I had to serve God in every way and to be obedient to your parents.
And I would close by saying, those who have ears to hear, let them hear. You have spoken, son. I'm proud to let you know that I had you as my guest. I'll never forget this moment. Mr. John Lambert McHugh, 104 years old, and his beautiful daughter, Emily McHugh. Have a wonderful day. All the best. Great to have had you today.
God
Thank
bless
you.
all.
Thank you so much.
All right.
God bless you all to ask me to appear, sir.
Thank you very much. All the best and take care, my brother.
And thank you very much.